Revealed, the incredible truth that left a millionaire frozen as a beggar promised to heal his D. David Thompson, once the titan of Maplewood's business world, now found himself rooted on the chilly curb of Main Street, a discarded man. A gray sky draped over his world, matching his faded designer suit and the wrinkled skin of regret etched on his face. Where once there was power and fortune, now flickered the dim lights of despair. He missed his son Jake's calls that had become whispers in the void of his ambition. Success will mend the bond, he told himself, stubbornly dismissing the heartfelt messages. But that was before the market crash. The day his empire crumbled like a house of cards, his heart sank even deeper than his bank account. Days without food, nights spent on benches staked out by the indifferent streetlights. Stripped of everything, David's pride felt like a heavy coat dragging him through life, too heavy to shake off. Then came Annie, a veteran who had put away her combat boots for a life of giving. With sparkling eyes and a fierce kindness, she saw him not as a fallen millionaire, but as a man in need of redemption. "You're not just a failure, David," she said gently one evening. "You still have something to give." It was a lifeline tossed into murky waters. David felt a tug of hope stir in his chest, and it frightened him. Their friendship bloomed amidst stories of survival. Each etched tale Annie shared opened David's eyes to a world he had ignored: the homeless, the hardworking but underpaid, the families fraying at the seams. The way they supported one another through laughter and heartbreak became a lesson he desperately needed. One cold night, as he shared a blanket with others and listened to their laughter, he thought of Jake. He had pushed Jake away in search of wealth, and now, wealth meant nothing. He felt a tightening in his chest, a recognition of his poor choices, coupled with a flicker of longing. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Incredibly, an opportunity came. The community center, a beacon of hope, was facing closure. David saw his chance to reclaim his purpose. He envisioned a fundraiser, drafting plans with a new perspective. The heartbeats of the community echoed in his head, and though fear gripped him, his resolve solidified. But as he gathered courage to reach out for help, an icy realization froze him. His past actions haunted not just him, but others he hoped to inspire. The moment he learned Jake was coming to town felt monumental. Will he go back to lavish parties with hollow laughter, drowning in false acceptance? Or face the haunting truth of his fractured family? Standing before the community center, heart pounding like a drum, he paused. Annie's voice echoed in his mind, urging him toward authenticity. Could he bridge the chasm he had created, or would he remain a ghost in his son's life forever? David stood frozen, the world bustling around him, unaware of the storm brewing inside his chest. He fought against the memories of conversations he never had with Jake. Each missed call felt like a nail in his heart, pushing him deeper into his own regret. Yet here stood that spark of determination, urging him forward when everything else felt heavy and insurmountable. The chill in the air didn't match the warmth he felt from Annie's friendship. Each day spent with her opened his eyes wider to the struggles of those around him, people hiding in plain sight. He had witnessed their pain, their resilience. He had shared his own fears and failures under the stars, softening the icy corners of his heart. In those moments, he recognized a truth: he was not just a former millionaire, but a man who could still take steps toward healing, both for himself and his estranged son. His phone buzzed in his pocket, jolting him back. The familiar name lit up the screen: Jake. David's hands shook. The desire to answer, to bridge the growing chasm between them, was met with an instinctual fear of rejection. What could he possibly say? Could he tell Jake about the nights spent on cold benches, the friends he'd made, the lessons he'd learned? Would those realities push his son further away? Suddenly, the urge to act overwhelmed him. He had a chance to change the narrative. This was his moment to show Jake who he was becoming rather than who he used to be. David took a step toward the community center, and that step felt like a leap of faith. He pulled out his phone, adrenaline surging through him, when he heard it, the sound of laughter echoing from the center. A group of neighborhood children gathered around a table, working on art projects, their faces alive with joy. For the first time in ages, he felt something shift within him. Maybe, just maybe, he could tap into that childlike spirit with his son. These kids, bright-eyed and innocent, had hope and ambition bursting from them. He thought of how joy can be ignited in the simplest of moments. Inspiration washed over him, a soft light pushing back the dark corners of his mind. Determining the next steps needed to revive the community center was easier than he expected. He mapped out ideas: bake sales, silent auctions, talent shows. A concert featuring local talents. He could anchor it all. He could not only bring the community together but draw Jake back into his life. It held the promise of second chances, both for him and for the relationships he desperately wanted to mend. Just then, Annie emerged from the crowd, a knowing smile on her lips. "You look different," she observed, her eyes glinting with encouragement. "What's changed?" Tears brimmed in David's eyes, an overwhelming mixture of determination and vulnerability. "I'm going to call Jake. I want him here. I want him to see what I'm doing." Annie clapped him on the back, her grin lighting up the dreary surroundings. "That's the spirit. Show him the heart you found." But there it was again, the icy dread lurking just beneath the surface. What if Jake didn't want any part of him anymore? What if he couldn't forgive the past? His heart raced at the thought as he pulled his phone out again, his finger hovering over Jake's contact. This could be the moment when he writes a new chapter, or it could shatter into pieces like the life he once knew. As anxiety and hope tangled within him, he pressed the call button, breath caught in his throat. Nervously, he watched the screen, waiting, praying for the sound of his son's voice. This was it, the bridge to his son was being tested, and he could only wonder if it would hold. The phone rang, each beep sounding like thunder in David's ears. He felt the weight of the world pressing down on him, the desperate thrum of his heartbeat drowning out the laughter that had once offered him solace. It was just an ordinary call, but for him, it felt monumental. As the seconds dragged on, the laughter from the community center faded into silence, replaced by a buzzing tension that filled the air like static electricity. Then, at last, it happened. David's breath caught when he heard the voice on the other end. "Hello." Jake's voice was hesitant, almost a whisper. It was the sound of uncertainty, of a boy straddling the line between childhood and adulthood, a yearly reminder of time, of distance. The word hung in the air, fragile and loaded. David's voice cracked. He could hardly believe he was finally speaking to his son. "It's your dad." There was a pause, a stillness that felt like an eternity. David could almost hear Jake's brain sifting through memories, both vivid and shadowy, happy moments overshadowed by disappointment and regret. David's heart sank further. Would he just be a ghost in Jake's memory? "Why are you calling?" Jake finally replied, suspicion lacing his words. It cut deeper than any knife. I wanted to talk. I could use some time with you. I don't want to miss any more." David felt raw, his words spilling out like a dash of honesty that needed no embellishment. "I'm doing things in the community now. I want to show you who I am. Who I'm trying to be." Another silence followed, longer this time, as if Jake was considering tearing down walls that had been built to protect him. David's stomach twisted. "Is this about that center where you used to hang out?" Jake finally asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and distrust. David could picture his son scrunching his brows as he shifted the weight of life's complexities on his shoulders. "Yes. It is. I've been rebuilding it. We're doing art projects, concerts, things that bring people together." David's excitement surged, but he fought to keep it in check. "There are kids there, they remind me how to feel alive again. A beat of silence stretched again before Jake responded. Why should I care about that? David inhaled sharply. Because it's not just about the center, it's about wanting to be a father. I'm trying to make things right, Jake. I get that I might have messed up, but I want to be in your life, if you'll let me. David felt exposed, vulnerable in every sense. He knew he was asking for a second chance, but the enormity of that request made him dizzy. The wind picked up outside, rattling the windows of the community center as if nature itself was awaiting Jake's response. Finally, Jake let out a heavy sigh. You want me to come to some charity event just to see how cool you are now? I want you to see that I'm working hard to change, if not for me, then for us, David answered, each word laced with sincerity. Not just as an answer to my past, but as a way to start over. I want to share it with you. Jake paused, the silence stretching thin. You really think it's that simple? David felt a weight clinging to his throat, fear twisting within him. No, he admitted softly. But I believe it can begin to be. All I need is a chance, just to show you. I'm scared you won't give me that. Another pause, and then Jake's voice broke through the distance, softer this time. I don't know, Dad. David's heart sank. Just think about it, okay? He said quickly, urgency creeping into his voice. I'll be here. Whenever you're ready. As he ended the call, the world around him felt electric and heavy with uncertainty. He looked up at Annie, her hopeful gaze filled with unshed tears. Did he agree? She asked gently. No, he replied, the weight of disappointment settling heavy in his chest once more. But before he could think too deeply about it, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Jake. I'll think about coming to see the center, but I need time. David stared at those words, heart racing. He had managed to open a crack in the door of their relationship. But would it be enough to push through? Would father and son truly find their way back to each other, or would that narrow pathway crumble under the weight of the past? The uncertainty loomed like a storm over his heart as he prepared for what was to come. What would he do if the moment arrived when Jake finally stepped through that door? David sat alone in the back of the community center, staring at the walls he had once known so well. They felt like memories, an echo of laughter and chaos mixed with the shadows of his regrets. He could practically visualize the kids from years ago running through the halls, chasing one another amidst the sound of unfiltered joy. But those days were lost now, and all he had left was a flicker of hope that this new beginning might somehow bridge the gap between him and Jake. The buzz of activity around him felt distant, like a bustling city heard through thick glass. Annie was busy coordinating the evening's events, her gentle laughter interspersed with the occasional shout to organize the volunteers. David forced himself to smile, but his mind was orbiting around the possibility of Jake walking through the door. The anxious beats of his heart were a relentless reminder of the stakes. Hey, David. You good? Annie's voice broke through his thoughts as she approached him, clipboard in hand. Her tight smile revealed her concern. Just thinking, he replied softly, fighting against the lump in his throat. About Jake. Annie nodded, her expression shifting to one of empathy. You're doing everything you can. Just give him time. David wanted to believe her. But time felt like a phase that had passed him by as he stood at this crossroads of uncertainty. Would Jake give him that chance? What if he never walked through those doors? The thought alone sent a shiver down his spine. The lights flickered, and for a moment, David's heart jumped. He turned swiftly, expecting to see the familiar silhouette of his son. But it was just the wind sweeping through the opened windows, playing tricks with his emotions. You know, back in the day, I spent many nights here worrying about kids who never showed up, David admitted, watching a few community members set up tables for the upcoming event. I should be been there for them just like I need to be for Jake. Annie placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You can't change the past. But remember, you're trying to rebuild now. You're not just doing this for yourself, it's for others too. The love you're showing is powerful, David. It might just be enough to pull him in. Her words wrapped around him like a warm blanket, but doubt still crept into his mind like a shadow. Then, just as they shared a hopeful moment, the door swung open, and all heads turned. A group of teenagers filed in, laughter spilling into the space. It was the kind of noise that used to fill the center, a jolt of energy he needed. Look who it is. The new art guy. One girl exclaimed, grinning. Their enthusiasm was infectious. David felt his spirits lift a little, recalling the joy of creativity he'd shared with his own son in years past. His phone vibrated again, this time a notification from his messages. Without prying from the conversation around him, he glanced at his screen. His heart skipped as he read a new text from Jake. Can I come tomorrow? I want to check it out. David's chest swelled. Hope lashed at his insides. Was this really happening? He quickly typed back, absolutely. I can't wait to show you everything. As he hit send, he felt a ripple of excitement wash over him. Maybe there was light at the end of this tunnel. Maybe they could start to untangle the years of hurt. Annie smiled as she caught the glimmer in his eye. Looks like the door isn't just cracked anymore. David returned her smile, filled with a newfound sense of purpose. No, it's wide open now, he replied, hardly believing the words. His mind raced ahead, considering what tomorrow might bring. Would Jake see the transformation in his father? More importantly, would he see that David was no longer just a specter from his past? The air was thick with anticipation. David's thoughts swirled as he watched the kids playing. He had taken the first steps to become the father he always wanted to be, but would it be enough? As the laughter echoed around him, one question consumed David: could an open heart mend the fractures of the past? David woke the next morning with the sun peeking through his window, its rays stretching across his room like the first tendrils of hope. The day felt different, charged with the promise of a new connection. He rolled out of bed, the excitement coursing through him like a strong current. He had a million thoughts racing through his mind as he brushed his teeth. What would he say to Jake? What if his son was still mad? What if this open heart of his didn't make a difference? Each question tumbled over the last, threatening to drown him in anxiety. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of Annie's words. It all boiled down to one thing: he had to be honest and show up. After a quick breakfast, he headed to the community center a little earlier than usual. The familiar scent of cleaning supplies and fresh paint greeted him, a scent that now felt more like a foundation for a reborn version of what had once been. He turned on the lights in the art room, smiling as he recalled the vibrant colors canvassing the walls. His hands itched to create, to bring forth something beautiful amidst the remnants of pain. As the clock ticked closer to the time he'd set for Jake, David busied himself with a new project. He gathered brushes, paint, and a blank canvas, trying to channel his nerves into something productive. It was a way to prepare himself, to ground himself before the possibility of their reunion swept him away. Time dragged. Every minute felt like an hour. Just then, footsteps echoed from the entrance. David's heart started hammering. Was it Jake? He stood, paintbrush in hand, frozen in anticipation. The door swung open, and there he was, Jake, looking older, yet still carrying that familiar spark. Dad? Jake's eyes scanned the room, uncertainty threaded into his voice. Hey, buddy, David managed, stepping forward. The sight of his son struck him with a wave of emotion. Jake had his mother's eyes, intense and searching. I'm really glad you came. Silence stretched awkwardly between them, both of them unsure of the right words. Jake rubbed the back of his neck, his expression a mix of tension and curiosity. Is this where you've been hanging out? Yeah, David replied, pointing to the organized chaos around them. I've been trying to bring some life back to this place. It's important to me. Jake nodded, his gaze falling on the canvas. You're painting? It's something I love, David said, feeling a bit sheepish. I thought maybe we could do it together. If you want. At the suggestion, Jake hesitated, the wall around him slightly softening. I don't know. It feels different. Different can be good, David reminded him, trying to sound hopeful. Maybe even fun. After a lingering moment, Jake chuckled, a hint of warmth breaking through his timid demeanor. Okay, let us see what you've got. As they settled into the work, laughter flowed slowly at first but then began to build. David showed Jake a few techniques, and for every stroke on the canvas, it felt like they were mixing echoes of the past with the hope of something new. They were both thriving on the energy, the paint splattering just as their words spilled from their lips. It felt good. Really good. But amidst the colorful explosion, David couldn't shake the feeling that this was a fragile moment, one that could easily shatter. What if they stumbled back into heartache? What if tomorrow felt entirely different than today? The canvas slowly transformed before them, and David's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and apprehension. Could their shared passion pave the way for a renewed connection? Would Jake want to continue this journey? As they stepped back to admire their makeshift masterpiece, a messy but beautiful blend of flourished colors, David's thoughts were interrupted by Jake's hesitant voice. Dad, what if it's not just about the painting? David's heart dropped. The direction of their conversation shifted in an unexpected way. What had Jake unearthed? Was it a fear or a realization? A question hung in the air, heavy with significance. David faced his son, the weight of uncertain futures colliding with flickers of optimism. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears, and beneath that layered meaning lay another question so profound it made him freeze. What if painting together was just the beginning of something much bigger? David's breath caught as he looked at Jake, his son's vulnerability washing over him like a sudden rain. The canvas behind them, colorful and chaotic, now felt like a fragile barrier against the weight of unspoken truths. What do you mean? David asked, trying to sound steady, even as his heart raced. Jake shifted uncomfortably. I don't think we can just paint and pretend like everything is fine. There's a lot we need to talk about us. The air turned thick, and David's hands trembled slightly around his paintbrush. This wasn't just about colors on a canvas. It was about their lives, the years lost, the silence that had defined their relationship for so long. Okay, David replied cautiously, then let's talk. Jake took a deep breath, focusing on the floor for a moment before lifting his gaze. I felt lost, Dad. Like you were off painting your life and I was just stuck. You left without really saying goodbye. The words hit David like a punch. Even after all this time, he thought he had made peace with his choices, but hearing Jake's feelings brought everything crashing back. I never meant to leave you behind, David whispered, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. Jake's expression softened. I know you didn't. But you didn't come back for me after Mom, you just kept painting. I guess I thought if I was mad enough, it would make you notice. David opened his mouth to respond but found his voice caught in his throat. It was a bitter pill to swallow. He had been so consumed by his art, his way of coping, that he hadn't realized the depth of Jake's pain. I can't change the past, but I want to make things right now. I want you to be a part of my life again. What does that even mean? Jake asked, a flicker of anger mixed with hope in his voice. Can it really change? Or is this just a moment? David cringed at the challenge in his son's eyes. It wasn't just a moment. It was everything. I want to try, he said softly, the sincerity of his commitment pulsating between them. Let us try to be together. Not just in this art room, but in our lives. Jake hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his face. But how do we do that? What if it fails again? Then we face it together, David replied, a surge of determination lighting his voice. I believe we can do this. It's scary, but anything worth having always is. Trust is built over time. Trust, Jake echoed, chewing on the word as if it were foreign to him. You expect me to just trust you after all this? I know it's hard, David said, remorse flooding his chest. But I really want to earn that trust back. I want to let you down again. For a moment, silence enveloped them, thick and heavy, as they both grappled with the weight of what lay ahead. David felt as if they were at the edge of a ledge, teetering between fear and the unknown, ready to leap. Then Jake exhaled. Okay. Let us give it a shot. But no more running away, okay? Absolutely, David promised, feeling the tension begin to lift. As they resumed their painting, a sense of shared purpose filled the air. Brush strokes echoed their commitment, each splash of color a step closer to rebuilding their connection. Just when David thought they were gaining momentum, Jake paused, the brush hovering above the canvas. But, Dad, what if this is all we ever become? Just two guys painting on a canvas? Hope and dread flickered inside David. The question much deeper and troubling than it seemed, a lingering uncertainty about the future. Was painting the answer, or just a temporary balm for deeper wounds? A question loomed on the horizon, begging to be answered. David's heart raced at the thought of the conversation still ahead. He opened his mouth to respond but realized that this was just the surface of what lay beneath. What if this was the moment that defined them both? David felt the weight of Jake's question hang in the air, thick and pervasive, making it nearly impossible to breathe. Each breath was laden with the fear of stepping over a line they had long ago drawn. What if this wasn't just a moment? What if they truly painted themselves into a corner? Let us not just paint. Let us build something here, David finally said, his voice a mixture of fear and determination. Something real. Jake lowered the brush, his expression softening. What do you mean by build? I mean, David searched for the right words. Let us not just keep doing this, painting away the past. Let us go out. Let us talk. I want to hear your stories, your fears. And maybe, share mine too. The prospect of unveiling more of himself felt vulnerable, like standing naked in front of a crowd. It was terrifying. But the desire to connect with Jake outweighed the fear. They'd been at a stalemate for too long. Are you serious? Jake raised an eyebrow, disbelief flashing across his face. Absolutely, David replied, nodding with fervor. Let us take it one step at a time. I don't want to rush into anything. Just let us start somewhere. For a heartbeat, Jake studied his father, searching for any sign of insincerity. But David stood firm, a resolve building inside him that he hadn't felt in too long. Jake took a deep breath, as if preparing for a leap into icy water. Okay, I'm in. But I want to go somewhere serious. No more being polite or avoiding the tough stuff. David couldn't suppress a smile, warmth flooding through him. Deal. Wherever you want. Then let us start with the coffee shop down the street. They open in 5, Jake said, his voice bouncing with an unexpected lightness. But remember, Dad. You can't just talk about art. I want the real deal. Real deal, David echoed, mirroring Jake's renewed energy. They put down their brushes and stepped away from the canvas, its vibrant strokes a reminder of the barriers still needing to be dismantled. As they walked side by side, David felt hope flutter in his chest, tentative yet fierce. Underneath the fluorescent lights of the coffee shop, the hum of conversation surrounded them. After placing their orders, they settled into a corner table, Jake's gaze fixed on the window while David watched him, feeling a mix of pride and apprehension. This was it, this was their chance. So what did you want to say before? Jake asked, his voice softer. David hesitated, where should he begin? Should he talk about the pain of leaving? The regret? Or maybe even the joy of being back together? I guess the first thing is that I'm sorry, he started. For everything. For not being there when you needed me most. Jake's expression hardened slightly, a reminder of the uphill battle they faced. You're sorry a lot. But it doesn't change things, does it? David felt a lump in his throat. I know. I can't change the past. But I want to change the future. I want to be part of your life, if you'll let me. Jake's gaze locked onto David's, searching, questioning. The moment felt electric, filled with everything unsaid. What if I'm not sure I want you to be? He asked suddenly, vulnerability edging his voice. The question cut deep, but David knew this was the honesty they had craved for so long. Then we'll figure it out together. I'm not going anywhere this time. For a moment, silence fell again, wrapping around them like a thick fog. The intensity of their gaze held the potential for change, but also for pain. The journey ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. Jake leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful look crossing his face. Okay. But if we do this, you can't hide behind your art anymore. You need to face everything, too. Can you do that? David nodded, heart racing with resolve. This wasn't just about painting anymore, it was about rebuilding their history, exploring the depths underneath their relationship. Absolutely. Just promise me, we'll be honest every step of the way. Deal, Jake replied, a thin smile breaking through the tension. As they cautiously ventured into this new territory, David's heart soared, each beat signaling a cautious hope. They were finally acknowledging the wounds, the struggles. But with every promise made, David wondered how deep the scars really ran. What awaited them on the other side of this honesty? Would it lead to healing, or would it reveal more of the fractures? Silence settled in again, but it felt different this time, charged, hopeful, and pregnant with possibilities. What secrets would uncover as they peeled back the layers of each other's lives? David could feel the atmosphere shift around them, the weight of the unspoken words lingering in the air like the scent of freshly brewed coffee. He wanted to lean into this moment, to push through the tough conversations that lay ahead, but uncertainty gnawed at him. This was uncharted territory they were about to explore together. Okay, let's talk, Jake said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but David noticed the slight tremor in his hands as he shifted in his seat. What do you want to start with? The art thing? Or is there something else? David took a deep breath, the steam from their coffee cups swirling like their emotions. I think I want to start with why I left. The words felt heavy on his tongue, but he knew it was important. It was the first stepping stone. Jake shifted, leaning forward slightly. You left because I thought it was what was best, David admitted, each word drawing him deeper into the conversation. I was lost. I felt like I was suffocating under pressure. I thought leaving would give you the life you deserved. A good life without my mess following you. So, you thought abandoning me was better? Jake's eyes narrowed, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Is that really what you believed? No. That's not what I meant. David felt his pulse quicken, heat rising in his cheeks. In my mind, I was doing the noble thing. But I see now how wrong I was. I cost you so much. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. Jake let out a sharp breath. Sorry doesn't fix this, Dad. His tone was tinged with bitterness, and David could see the cracks beginning to form in his resolve. You make it sound like you were some hero. But you weren't. You were just gone. The word stung, but David deserved the truth. I know. And it's not something I'll ever be able to take back. I just want the chance to start again, to be present this time, he replied, his heart racing. Jake fell silent, his gaze flickering between David and the outside world, not quite meeting his father's eyes. The coffee shop buzzed around them, oblivious to the emotional storm brewing at their table. And what if I can't forgive you? Jake finally whispered, vulnerability creeping back into his voice. The question hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Then we'll take it one step at a time. No pressure, David said gently, striving for a calming tone. I just want to be in your life if you'll let me. Jake turned his cup slowly, tracing the rim with his finger, lost in thought. This isn't easy for me, you know. There's so much anger inside. Sometimes I don't know how to deal with it. David leaned in, willing to dive deeper. Feelings are messy, Jake. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel hurt. But I want to be here while you figure it out. I won't shy away from it anymore. I promise. Jake looked up, searching David's eyes once more. You really mean that? So much, David replied, his sincerity pouring out. I'd give anything for a shot to rebuild what we lost. But we need to be honest, no matter how painful. The tension between them began to shift, sparking a glimmer of hope. Perhaps they could navigate this, even if the path was rocky. Just then, the barista's voice cut through the moment, calling out their names for pickup. David glanced towards the counter, the clamor of the coffee shop returning to the forefront of his mind. Maybe you should tell me more about how you've been. About your life since everything, David suggested, eager to steer the conversation toward a different direction, one that could bring them closer. Jake hesitated but then nodded slowly. All right, but just so you know, I've been struggling too. David felt the floor beneath them shift, leaning into a moment of honesty that might just lead them somewhere new. I'm ready to hear it. Whatever it is. As Jake opened up, David felt a mix of hope and trepidation rising within him. Would this honesty lead them closer, or would it expose wounds yet to heal? In that moment, David knew they were about to cross another threshold in their relationship. What would Jake reveal, and how would it shatter or mend their fragile connection? He held his breath, waiting for the next truth to unfold. Jake took a shaky breath, his face a canvas of emotions. It's been hard, Dad. I never really knew how to say it before. He hesitated, fingers still tracing the cup, gathering thoughts like scattered leaves. The truth is I felt abandoned. It was like everyone just moved on while I was stuck in a whirlwind of anger and confusion. David's heart ached at the words. It felt like he was being introduced to a stranger, even though this was his son sitting across from him. I can't imagine what you went through, he admitted, his voice quieter now. I wish I had been there. Jake's gaze finally met his, raw and piercing. You think that just saying you're sorry makes it better? It doesn't. I was left with so many questions. Did you even care? Did you ever think about me? Each sentence landed like a blow. David felt the weight of his decisions, the choices he had made and the pained aftermath left for Jake to navigate alone. Of course, I cared. I still do, he said, his voice catching. I just didn't handle it right. I thought I was saving you. But I was only saving myself. Silence stretched between them again, thick and full of unspent pain. David wanted to reach out, to fold his son into a hug and wash away years of hurt with just that simple action. But he was paralyzed, not knowing if he deserved that closeness. Jake broke the quiet. I tried to pretend I was fine. I kept busy, making friends, going to school. But it felt hollow, like I was just putting on a mask. With a flicker of vulnerability, Jake continued, I started drawing again, sketches, mostly. Sometimes, they'd make me feel something again, but those moments were fleeting. Drawing? I never knew you were still doing that, David said, surprised by the revelation. You always had a talent for it. Yeah, well, it felt meaningless without you there to see it. Jake's voice was steady, but David could tell the words carried a weight far greater than he could fully comprehend. David leaned in closer. I'd love to see your work. Anytime you're ready, I mean it. Jake let out a short laugh that held no joy. You think I'd just whip out my sketchbook after you disappeared on me? A wave of guilt washed over David. I didn't think I was just trying to be happy for me. Jake interrupted, his tone sharp. You don't get to choose what's best for me anymore. The sting of truth cut deep. David nodded, his throat tightening. I understand. I just want to be here now. Can we talk about easier stuff? Maybe some of the things you've enjoyed. Friends, school, anything. Jake seemed to reflect on this, uncertainty flickering across his features. Well, I've been getting better grades in art class, he finally offered, his voice softening just a bit. Miss Lane says I have a gift. That's amazing. I always knew you had it in you. David smiled, feeling a tiny spark of their old dynamic. Art is such a powerful way to express how you feel. I'd love to hear what inspires you. Jake looked hesitant, then nodded, the stiffness in his shoulders seeming to ease a little. I draw what I wish life could be. There was a depth in his eyes, dreams, aspirations, perhaps even unvoiced fears. David felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. Let us find those moments together, okay? I want to know all those layers of you. The good, the bad, everything. I'll think about it, Jake responded cautiously, but something in his tone suggested that the door had cracked open just a little. As their conversation wandered through art and life, a new warmth developed between them. For the first time, David felt as if he could glimpse a shared future, even if it was still shrouded in uncertainty. But just as things began to feel brighter, a forlorn expression crossed Jake's face. You know, it's not just about you and me. There's more. I don't know if you're ready for that yet. David's heart sank a bit at the hint of whatever darkness lingered behind those words. What do you mean? He asked, feeling a weight settle in the pit of his stomach. Jake's eyes edged downwards. Let's just say, there's something I've been keeping from you. Something. That might change everything. The tremor in Jake's voice sent shivers through David, and he knew they were about to uncover another layer of truth. What was Jake keeping hidden? Would it push them further apart or tighten the bonds at last? David's breath caught, a sudden chill washing over him. There was a weight to Jake's words, a sense that they were on the brink of something monumental, something that could either draw them closer together or tear them apart completely. What is it? David asked, his heart pounding. He leaned in, sensing the gravity of the moment. Jake hesitated, looking down at his hands as if they held the answers. It's about Mom, Jake finally said, his voice tight. I found some of her things in the attic and some old letters. I never read them, but I saw what she wrote. It made me realize I think I don't even know how to grieve properly because I never got to say goodbye. Each word felt like a jagged rock thrown into the current of their conversation. David felt the weight heavy in his chest, a familiar sorrow creeping in. I'm so sorry, Jake, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I should have been there for you. For both of you. Maybe if you were, Jake replied, his tone catching like a fragile thread. Maybe I wouldn't be so angry or confused. I spent so much time wishing things were different, fantasizing about a life where we all got along. But there are days, Jake took a shaky breath, there are days when I resent you for not being there. Like you're a ghost I keep running into but can never quite touch. David felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes, the overwhelming sadness mingling with shame. I know I failed you in so many ways. I thought I could shield you from the pain by being absent, but instead, I left you alone to grapple with it. It was selfish. Selfish feels like an understatement, Jake replied, frustration bleeding into his words. You left me with all these questions, and it took me forever to process it. To understand that I could still love her and hate how things turned out. I can't take back my choices, David said softly, but I want to support you through this. I'm desperate to be in your life not just as a father, but as someone who will witness your pain and joys. Silence enveloped them like a blanket, heavy with unshared truths. David's heart ached to reach for Jake's hand, to offer some measure of comfort, but he remained rooted, aware of how fragile their connection still was. Talking about this, it feels hard, Jake finally admitted. But I think I want to try. You have to understand though, this will take time. I can't just turn off my feelings. I would never ask you to, David replied, hope flickering within him. I just want to be here, step by step, while you heal. Jake nodded slowly, uncertainty still shadowing his features. There was a softness in his voice as he began to share memories of his mother, those fleeting moments of joy, and the tangled emotions that accompanied them. David listened intently, heart swelling with each word, each memory. For every reminiscence shared, a piece of Jake's story unfolded before David. The balance of pain and love weaved together a new connection that neither of them saw coming. With every shared laugh and tear, they danced around what it meant to grieve and heal. As time passed and coffee cups emptied, David could feel the room lightening, layers of hurt peeling away with each glimpse into Jake's heart. This was what David had craved, a chance to restore their bond and be present in all its parts. What felt like an insurmountable wall was, instead, a series of small cracks, open spaces leading to deeper understanding. The fear and resentment still lingered, but they slowly gave way to acceptance. "Thanks for listening," Jake said, breaking the momentarily contemplative air, just a trace of a smile reaching his lips. "It's harder than I imagined. But it feels good to talk." David beamed back at him, a warmth blooming in his chest. "Let us keep doing this, okay? Whatever you need." "Yeah, I'd do like that," Jake replied, his voice gaining a renewed sense of strength. As they exchanged tentative smiles, David felt that familiar tug of hope grow stronger. Maybe this was the beginning of something beautiful, a shared journey toward acceptance. The door swung open, letting in a fresh breeze, and in that moment, it felt as if the universe was cheering them on. "Want to grab another coffee?" Jake asked, standing up from the table with a lightness that hadn't been there before. "Absolutely," David replied, his heart soaring. As they walked side by side, the weight of past burdens felt lighter, less daunting. David could see the possibility of a new beginning ahead, an exciting road of rediscovery stretching before them. Their laughter echoed in a cozy coffee shop, and for the first time, David dared to hope that perhaps they wouldn't just be two guys painting on a canvas, but a father and son gracefully coloring in the spaces of their lives, each stroke a representation of healing, growth, and renewed love. Whatever awaited them in the future, they would face it together. They had begun to write a new story, one defined not by regrets or ghosts but by the vibrancy of living, of loving, and of truly being present. As their hearts began to mend, David silently vowed to himself this time, he wouldn't let go. This was just the beginning of their renewal, a chance to create something extraordinary together. At last, David felt grounded in his purpose, energized by the journey they were embarking upon. It wasn't a perfect path, but one grounded in sincerity, connection, and the promise of healing. You need to continue to support these stories. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to help feed the algorithm and show your love for this content. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this emotional ending. And don't wait, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this powerful transformation. Your support is everything.